really slow steps here for them taking some action. I know you're trying to hold their feet to the line here. Talk about the latest and what you've been able to get, if anything, from them here.
Well, they've done the little things, maybe even big things in East Palestine. They've paid for water testing. They've reimbursed people for hotel stays when they had to move out of their homes. They've talked a good game. They're cleaning up the contaminated dirt and water, not very quickly, but they're doing a good bit of that. But in the end, they're not paying for people's potentially. There's no fund they've created if someone gets cancer 2, 3, 4 years later, like far too many of our soldiers and Marines did from Agent Orange years ago, and now from the exposure to the burn pits. They're doing little to make up for people who've lost huge values in their home. $100,000 home now may be worth only $60, because who's going to be able to, who wants to move to a town where those questions are still out there? So we're and the last thing is, they have put their corporate lobbyists to work in Washington to try to kill the rail bill that we're working on. And we've got 51 Democrats that are voting for it. We're trying to get 10 Republicans so we can break the filibuster and get to 60 or 61 votes. And they're doing all they can. The number 2 Senate Republican from South Dakota, a nice guy. I like him. I work with him on things, but he used to work for the rail lobby. And the Speaker of the House and the House Representatives from California is far too close to the rail lobby. So they need to back off trying to pass our law to make rail lines safer, because this kind of stuff keeps happening. We've seen at least 6 derailments in Ohio alone since East Palestine. And including Ravenna, not people in your listening audience, Steubenville, Springfield, twice, Sandusky, maybe some I didn't hear about. So it's clear that they've got to do a better job in public safety.
Senator, let me ask you this. In your perfect world economically, because that's a big hit when you talk about East Palestine and the prices of their land and their property and everything, what would you like to see done economically there in that area?
Well, I'd first like to see us work together so that this doesn't happen again to other communities, number one. Number two, I'd like to see the railroads disclose what they're carrying through a state. I talked to the Springfield Republican sheriff in Springfield, whom I've gotten to know pretty well. She lived right near a derailment. She and her 93-year-old father had to flee because they didn't know what was in these rail cars in the middle of the night when it derailed. It turned out nothing hazardous, but she didn't know that. But third, I'd like to see Norfolk Southern really sit down and negotiate with local people what they need, and that is what happens to our home values, what happens if I get sick, I get cancer 3 years from now from this exposure, what happens to these farmers who can't sell their milk, dairy farmers. If you're 2 miles outside of East Palestine, if you live even in Salem, 7 or 8 or 10 miles away, and you're a dairy farmer, can you think you can sell your milk, even if you can test it and you know it's pure and you know it doesn't have any of these contaminants? Are you going to buy milk from a dairy farmer 2 miles away from East Palestine rather than buying milk from a dairy farmer in Coshocton or Millersburg or Worcester? Probably not. So they need to work through all those, and I've been very willing to work with them on that. I mean, I don't hate Norfolk Southern. I don't hate their executives that make 10 or 15 million a year while they continue to skimp on public health for people that have been affected. But I also want these companies to invest in safety, and they're not doing that the way they might have done before.
Senator, keep going on and keep pushing them. Hey, one real quick thing before I let you go. I know you were up in Toledo yesterday with the UAW workers on the picket line and such with this strike out there. What's the general feeling with these workers right now?
The workers are entirely behind the union. I asked a number of workers in different groups around as I was walking the picket line, then went to the union hall when they were applying for strike benefits from the union fund. And I said, anybody in the plant that's not for this? And they all said no. I mean, I'm sure there are a few out of 6,000 workers, but they're all in on this because they saw what the company did. 15 years ago, when GM and Ford especially were in real crisis as a company, the government helped because we didn't want these companies to fail. And most importantly, the workers did major benefit and wage givebacks. So now that the companies are prosperous, Stellantis made $12 billion just this year alone. Their chief executive makes $22 million, 365 times what the average worker makes. They just want to see that gap closed. If these executives got a 40% increase over the last few years in their compensation, when they really didn't need any more, they're already making millions, while workers have essentially been flat. I met workers that are making $15 and $16 and $17 an hour. Some of them there for a few years making $18 or $19 an hour. I mean, an American auto company, while the executives make literally I said 365. That's the average worker. The executives make 800 times what some of the workers I made. What's that all about? Really?
I agree. Senator, thank you for the time. Always appreciate it, and keep working on those areas.
I think you should have stuck with baseball instead of golf. That's just my opinion.
Oh, well, listen,
Thanks.
people who have golfed with me would say the same, Senator.
Yeah, they'd say the same. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. There you go. Senator Sherrod Brown joining us live this morning here on WAKR. All right.